Number 10. Superman Jr. is no more! Exclamation point. Remember that time that Superman Jr. quit? No? Well, you can if you read this Elseworld story. This is another Elseworld story out of the Elseworld's 80-page giant from the 90s. Seriously, this book is chock full of interesting and strange stories. In this one, Superman Jr. ends up quitting the superheroic game, much to Batman Jr.'s dismay, believing his dad will be around forever, so he's not needed. He's like, I quit, I'm over this. My dad's got this for life, for longer than life. I think you know where this is going next. Superman appears to die while taking a net full of dangerous missiles to safety in the emptiness of space to explode in. Supes Jr. then feels terrible, misses his dad, the whole world goes into a tizzy, and eventually Superman Jr. is inspired to return. I don't know if people use the word tizzy anymore, but I just did, so there you go. I'm making it a thing again. He helps Batman Jr. save some guys from an earthquake where they end up being trapped under tons of rock and snow. In the end, however, it's revealed that Superman faked his death in order to influence his son to return to his job as a hero, and everyone has a good laugh about it. Ha 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 ha! Oh, faking your death is such good fun. This story also features such amazing lines as Batguy/Bat Jr. I kid you not, he is called Batguy in this comic, asking Supes Jr. what's the true poop on this? And Superman Jr. responding with a rhyme. Rhyming on your father's grave, Superman Jr.? How distasteful. Number 9. DMT's rockumentary, The Lex Record Story. How about a story where we get the history of how Lex became the head of the most successful record label ever, representing all kinds of superheroic musician talent, and how he ended up selling the label to Darkseid. That is another story which comes to us from the Elseworld 80-page giant, and it is a delight. I promise I'm gonna have other stories that are not from this comic, but just let me get these out of the way, my friends. They're just so good. What a strange story this is. One wherein Superman is part of a superheroic Beetle-like group with Barry Allen, Green Arrow, and Aquaman. Oh, and he's the John Lennon of the group who is tragically killed. And I never knew I needed to see Martian Manhunter as a rock star, but I definitely did need that, and so do you. And before I move on to our number 8, if you are enjoying this list, be sure to let us know and show it by giving this video a thumbs up. It really does help us out here at Top 10 Nerd. Number 8. Superman/Batman. Absolute power! This comic is an interesting one. We are talking about a world in this story arc where Superman and Batman were reimagined as the only heroes. Both of their parents were wiped out at a young age, and Superman was never raised by the Kents. Instead, they were taken in and raised by Saturn Queen, Lightning Lord, and Cosmic King of the Legion of Supervillains. They created a fascist world which they collectively ruled with an iron fist, eliminating any and all opposing heroes who rose up or attempted to do so anyways. If you don't believe me, just look at the end of the first issue in this arc, which ends with Wonder Woman awakening and recruiting Uncle Sam. Yep, that's just how this story do. Number 7. Son of Superman. The 1999 Son of Superman tells a story where John Kent works alongside a group called the Supermen to discover the truth behind what really happened to his father, all as he's realizing just who his father really was, which his mom, Lois Lane, kept a secret, and as he's just realizing himself that he has superpowers. He doesn't even initially realize that Clark Kent and Superman were the same person, but initially instead suspects his mother was having an affair with the costumed hero Superman. Oh boy, John. In the end, they discovered that his father is still alive and had been kidnapped and held prisoner all these years by Lex Luthor with help from Martian Manhunter. Ooh, it does not look good on you, Martian Manhunter. It's not very nice. In the end, this plot is revealed, and despite John being new to heroics, he goes up against Lex, and the good guys end up prevailing. My favorite part, admittedly, is when John calls Lex's ponytail outdated. So 90s. Just gotta love that. Also, I just love that Lex has a ponytail in this. I also just love that this story ends with most of the older crew of Supes retiring, paving the way for a new era of supers like John himself. For me, Elseworld stories that end like this, I'm like, I wish this could be the way of DC. Just let some of these people retire. Let's get some fresh blood in here. We've got a lot of sons and daughters and such. Number 6. Batman in Darkest Night. All my Tales of the Dark multiverse fans out there are likely already familiar with this story, if not the original telling of it, then at least the dark retelling of it. You might know the version of Bruce Wayne from Earth -32, but for this multiverse story, we're talking about the version of Bruce that inspired him from the non-dark Earth, just Earth 32. No negatives needed. This version of Bruce is introduced to us in Batman in Darkest Night, a 90s comic that gave us an alternate story, one one where Bruce Wayne, instead of becoming Batman, becomes the Green Lantern in Hal Jordan's place, being chosen by Abin Sur instead. In this reality, Sinestro becomes Green Lantern, Bruce Wayne's biggest foe, and the Joker never existed, as Green Lantern prevents the accident which created him at Ace Chemicals. Here, Catwoman is also Star Sapphire, which I honestly just need more artwork in my life of that whole thing. I'm just like, more Catwoman Star Sapphire artwork, please. Give it to me. Number 5. Batman / Captain America. This has got to be one of my favorite stories out there. It's the team up we've all been waiting for, Batman and Captain America together. I actually love when these two team up. Here we see them taking on each other's main nemesis, featuring Cap's Red Skull and Bat's Joker. There is also a bit of a sidekick swap where Cap partners with Robin and Batman partners with Bucky, and in the end, of course, even Joker admits that Red Skull is so evil, even he is not interested in working with him. He may be a criminal lunatic, but he is an American criminal lunatic. When it comes to German World War II soldiers, even Joker isn't interested in crossing that line. And in the end, he and Red Skull end up squaring off themselves and fighting one another as well, after Joker finds out Red Skull's true allegiance. I just love the Joker's like, I might be crazy, but like, this is too crazy for me. Not about that. Number 4. Batman / Houdini, The Devil's Workshop. For all my Gotham by Gaslight fans out there, here's another stylistically appealing Elseworld story for you. This one evokes the feel of watercolors and also has some really pretty letters. It's really pretty to look at and features Batman teaming up with Houdini to fight vampires. What more could you want, I ask you? It also gives us a cool alternate Joker with Mad Jack Schadenfreude. The art is truly so good here, I must share with you the names responsible. Howard Chaykin and John Francis Moore are the writers, with art by Mark Chiarello and letters by Ken Bruzenak. Just a stunning read. You gotta check it out. Number 3. DC The New Frontier. Not only is this a beautiful world to get lost in, it is super stylized by the late and great Darwin Cook, who passed away in 2016. This Elseworld story paints our heroes as outlaws operating in the post-Korean War time period, where space is truly the new frontier. And being that it is, the story here is primarily led by protagonists and heroes Martian Manhunter and Hal Jordan. Also, I just gotta say, I love when Martian Manhunter gets to be like the main protagonist in a story. I feel like we don't hear enough from him usually. Maybe I just need to read more of his standalone series. Maybe that's what I need to do. The art style is simple and classic, and I also just really love the explosive use of color as well. It's a visually compelling series that I highly recommend checking out. Number 2. Earth 2. Earth 2 is home to many awesome heroes like Val-Zod, Superman, Power Girl, and Helena Wayne's Huntress. It is home to the superhero team known as the Wonders of the World, and while some of the original team is gone, we are introduced to new team members who take their place. And hey, we still got the golden oldie Alan Scott. I personally am just a big fan of both Power Girl and Helena Wayne and their team ups together, so Earth 2 for me, when it comes to alternate realities and worlds and their stories, has got to be one of my favorites personally. Number 1. Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come has to be one of the most beautiful Elseworld stories that takes us to an alternate future where there is a great divide and sort of war in the superhero community, following Superman's choice to retire. He does end up returning to the world of heroics at the behest of Diana, aka Wonder Woman. Kingdom Come was a story originally written by Mark Waid in response to a rise of anti-heroes in the comic world. And in the story, this is exactly what you see some of the classic heroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, and Alan Scott go up against. These new heroes whose ideologies are much more harsh and violent by comparison. Much more edgy. The artwork, of course, is done by one of the most amazing artists to this day in the biz, Alex Ross, and is all hand painted. We also get to end it with, of course, Superman and Diana becoming parents of like a cool baby, and then also they're like, hey Batman, you wanna also help us raise this super baby? I just love that. I love the three of them like parenting together. I think that's adorable.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Batman Gotham by Gaslight. A Tale of the Batman, written by Brian Augustin and brought to life by Mike Mignola. Comes a tale from the Victorian era where Batman is hunting down Jack the Ripper.
Your evening attire, sir. That was not the suit I need, Alfred.
So it's 1889, and while these murders of women are happening all over the place, the general public whispers in the wind that it may be Batman who is committing these crimes. Okay, so we got historic serial murders, we got old-timey gangs, Bruce gets framed, the candlelit mystery is afoot. I loved this one shot, honestly. It's really hard to put down as soon as you start. If you have time, at least watch the animated film because you owe it to yourself. A lot of candlelit, which way did he go? It's good, it's right up your alley, you'll love it. And before we go on to number 9, guys, if you could go ahead and toss this video a thumbs up, or else we'll be using candles to light this place up, just like Gotham by Gaslight. And we can't have that. You guys are literally the best. Thank you for your support. Number 9, the doom that came to Gotham. So written by the lovely Mike Mignola and Hellboy creator Richard Pace comes a tale taking place in 1928. All these old tales, I love it. So we have Bruce Wayne after he peaced out after the death of his parents. So now, 20 years later, he's returned, and he has to get pretty dark to take out the Lovecraftian horror known as the Lurker on the Threshold. This is a 3-issue miniseries, and it's a dark, weird, fast-paced adventure. I mean, we have demons that come into the plot, like demons, so you should know what you're getting into, especially if you're a fan of Mignola's other work, Gotham by Gaslight, which I mentioned 1 second ago. Number 8, Batman I Joker. This one is a trip. Okay, so we have the Bruce, and he was dumped into a vat of chemicals way back when, and now we see the Bat as the crazy antagonist, which already is super fun. Everybody's all like, all hail the Bruce, hail the God King of Gotham. And he's quite messed up. Yeah, he's like calling out other Gotham citizens, challenging them to kill his enemies before he gets to them himself. It's wild, it's like Mad Max, crazy. And if this isn't wacky enough for you, he wants everybody to challenge him. He wants them to earn the chance to become a god by defeating him in combat. That plus some resurrected villains, it really gets the Hunger Game vibes going. So if you're into some death sport like reading, this is an ideal one-shot. Bob Hall created a quite fun story here.
I swear to God. Swear to me!
And number 7, Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Knights in a Half Shell. Yes, just saying that out loud, I'm like, ooh, let's do it. This comic is so fun. It's written by James Tynion IV. Right off the bat, we see a pizza delivery guy as he drops off the za. And then of course there's a note that says, leave it on the street. And then we see turtle hands creep up out of the sewer. Yep, they come across the Batmobile, and then shortly after, they come across Batman himself. It's a pretty serious take as well. I mean, I know it looks fun because you're like, Ninja Turtles, Batman, sick. Which some fans didn't like how serious it was, but others rejoiced that they could dig their teeth into something after watching the Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated movie. It's a pretty slow start, but once it gets cooking, it's a hell of a lot of fun. The Turtles were transported to Gotham thanks to Krang, alongside their master, Splinter, and of course, archenemy, Shredder. They set up camp in the sewers, of course, but our own Killer Croc stumbles upon them, and then so begins this cat and mouse game with Batman and the Turtles. So Batman finds one of Raphael's side during a fight, and then Lucius Fox confirms it is from another universe. So the 6-issue series is a pretty short read, but Freddie Williams' art will keep you admiring the pages, taking it much longer than you think. Number 6, Justice Riders. Okay, this one was released back in 1997 by Chuck Dixon, and it's a wild tale of the Wild Wild West. Justice Riders is a one-shot that has the Justice League of America take on different roles. Like Wally West is an outlaw who's blamed for the death of Barry Allen. He's like a young guy too. And then Wonder Woman is the marshal. She's the old marshal in town. The 1873 story begins with Marshal Diana Prince's hometown, Paradise. More like Paradust. Am I right, fellas? And it's destroyed by an alcoholic sorcerer named Felix Faust. So she wrangles up her super squad and hits the dirt, heading for El Inferno to get revenge. Wild West anything is a good time. There's a lot of hat tipping, we got sunsets, we got giant rocks that look like fingers coming out of the ground, and of course we got some badass gun holsters and some hate chewing. There's rules when you read this one shot though. You have to do the accent in your head the entire time, that's it. Do your worst Western accent the entire time. Number 5, JSA Liberty Files. Okay, we got some Wild West hootin' and hollerin', but what about some World War II drama? So JSA Liberty Files was written by Tony Harris and Dan Jolly and sees the interception of a parcel in which the contents could change the outcome of the war. And then we got Owl, Clock, and Bat stepping in to save the day. So Jack the Grin, known as the albino smuggler, which is what my friends called me when I would steal their supplies for school, he intercepts a communicate and then hides it, and then starts making bids on it. So this is a two-parter, and it's fairly short, but it doesn't waste any time at all. The stakes are high, like right off the bat. So we have these schematics for a new German long-range bomber in the hands of the Joker, right? It's dark. We got some mysterious men in bowler hats, and they're doing their mysterious men in bowler hat things, smoking and whispering in dark shadows. You already know what you're in for. It's a great time. Number 4, Batman Gotham Noir. Coming from the minds of Ed Brubaker and drawn to life by Sean Phillips comes a pulp comic thriller. A notable difference here opposed to our usual Gotham tale is that it centers around Jim Gordon this time. And he doesn't have the best luck, and he's heavy into the booze. He's a private investigator who gets framed for murder as well. So those are the 3 things you just want in life right there. Fans are actually super excited to see these themes come spiraling down to this perfect crime story. It's dark, it's gritty, and most of all, it's realistic. They made Gotham quite interesting here as well because they didn't shoot necessarily for a superhero theme, right? So Jim Gordon finds himself sharing his life story with the only person that'll listen, not God, the Bat. So now Batman already is a noir character, so I'm glad they put the focus more on Gordon here. It felt fresh. You kind of expect it to go one way, but it doesn't, and that's the best part. Number 3, Superman speeding bullets. From J.M. DeMatteis and Eduardo Barreto comes the ultimate question of what would have happened if Superman was discovered by the Waynes of Gotham instead of the Kansas Kents. So right off the hop, we see the usual scenario playing out. We got the alleyway, we got the mugger with the gun, and then when it comes down to the mugger shooting Bruce as well, because he cried and he just hates when kids cry, the bullets don't penetrate his skin. And his wet eyes look up at the mugger, and then those wet eyes turn bright red. Yeah, he zapped the shit out of him. Laser eyes for the win. So this Batman is now angry. It cuts to him being older, and he remembers that he could have saved his parents, and it eats him alive. That plus these Superman abilities that he now has, it makes for a very, very entertaining ride. Number 2, Flashpoint. Okay, so one of the biggest upcoming DC movies, and for good reason, the storyline where the Flash tries to go back in time to save his mother from her tragic death, which is not a bad idea at all. This story was released in 2011, written by Jeff Johns and Andy Kubert, and it starts with Barry waking up with no Flash powers. In fact, the Flash doesn't even exist. In fact, everything has changed. His mother Nora was still alive. Sick. And his father Henry died 3 years prior. Oh. Yeah, so in his own timeline, his dad's actually alive and in jail, but we know this, right? There's no Justice League, and Superman isn't even in the picture. The best part and one plot point that we're most looking forward to in the movie is that Batman in this universe is actually Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne's father. So Bruce ended up dying that night, causing his mother Martha to go insane, and then she becomes the Joker. That's why during the opening credits of Batman vs Superman, we were all hyped because we saw Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Lauren Cohen, 2 huge actors in such a small opening scene with 0 dialogue. So everyone's like, huh, that must have been an expensive day to shoot. Yeah, it was. They had bigger plans for them down the future, and now with recent news of Michael Keaton set to return in the Flashpoint movie, Jeffrey Dean Morgan took to the internet and said, Michael Keaton swooped in and took my gig. Now, I think that's super cool. Ever since Zack Snyder walked away, my whole kind of bit in that world has walked away with him. However, there's always a chat going on. There's always a chat. May I peek into this chat, sir? Because we'd love to see that. We've been kind of begging for it. I don't know. It'll be good either way. We'll see. We shall see. I mean, we'll see it June 2nd, 2022. For now, if it's not delayed even more. And finally, number 1, Justice League The Nail. If you own a car, first of all, congrats. Secondly, you must know the pain of getting a flat tire. It's always at the worst times too, right? Well, imagine if a flat tire was the sole reason Lil Kal-El was never found. Yeah, coming from the mind of Alan Davis, we see this unfold and lead the world into a much, much different way of living without Superman, without hope. So now Lex Luthor doesn't have anybody to go toe-to-toe with, so that led to him becoming the beloved mayor of Metropolis. The Justice League are to be feared as well. The world has a lot of hatred towards metahumans and aliens. It's great how the Silver Age heroes also kept their costumes in this as well, because they're a lot of fun in this Elseworld story. We see Alan Davis revisit big players like the Outsiders and Batman, which he drew in the 80s. So I definitely recommend adding it to the list, and that's why I put it on number 1 of our list.
Number 10. The Reaching Hand. The amount of bizarre deaths Jimmy Olsen has to suffer in alternate realities, my goodness. In this story, featured in the Elseworld's 80-page giant from 1999, we see Bruce Wayne acting as a Lovecraftian detective, aiming to unravel the mystery that is the alleged murder of Elongated Man. In reality, something far more dark and sinister has taken hold of the hero and is using him as its vessel to spread darkness throughout the city and take hold of other innocent souls. It reminds me a bit of the bizarre and campy 90s film Cast a Deadly Spell. Like most Lovecraft-inspired horror stories, this one ends with a foreboding cliffhanger. That face. I love that face. Bruce Wayne's face at the end, he's like, what will happen? You're dead. You're gonna die. It's not gonna be good. Number 9. Teen Titans The Lost Annual. This strange story has a campy 60s feel to it. It was originally slated to be released in the early 2000s as an Elseworld special for Teen Titans, but was later delayed. In the end, it was released in 2008, where it would be referred to in the title as a Lost Annual. But originally, it was intended to be an Elseworld special, so I'm gonna count it. Here, the Teen Titans team up to try and save President John F. Kennedy, who has been kidnapped by space aliens and replaced by some kind of double. The whole adventure is pretty wacky, which honestly is what makes it so enjoyable. You know me, I love wacky adventures. Reminds me a bit of an original series Star Trek episode. And in case you haven't gathered by now, TOS is my favorite of the Star Treks, so yes. Although I am finally watching Discovery now, so I guess we'll see what happens. And before we move on to our number 8 spot, a quick thank you to all of you for joining me this list, and a reminder to click that like if you want more videos like this one. I personally love exploring Elseworlds with you, so I'd love to do more about it. Number 8. Elseworld's Finest, Supergirl and Batgirl. This one is kinda ridiculous, but also has some pretty powerful and epic moments. In this Elseworld story, both Superman and Batman do not exist. Kal-El was destroyed before he could become Superman, though Kara Zor-El still made it to Earth. She took his place as Metropolis's hero, becoming Supergirl. Bruce Wayne never became Batman either, and instead Barbara Gordon guards Gotham as Batgirl, after her parents were murdered by accident instead of the Waynes, who were meant to be targeted. The two women join forces and take on a very sneaky Lex Luthor, who Supergirl had thought of as a close friend and ally initially, and a very jacked Joker. He's like really jacked, like more jacked than you could probably imagine. He's also wearing like a little gym outfit, which is just something. Number 7. A Nation Divided. This Elseworld comic, Superman A Nation Divided, gives us a look at what Superman would be like if he was around during the Civil War and happened to be a Union soldier. In this story, Superman is known as Atticus Kent and ends up finding out he has superpowers during the Civil War. He quickly becomes the Union's new secret weapon and even takes both Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln on a little flight to give them a tour of the Capitol. I personally love when history and comics meld, and Elseworld stories that posit what if superheroes were real and part of historical events. So for me, this was an interesting story and one that I enjoyed. The whole story is told through letters of various historical figures as well as Kent himself. Number 6. Thrillkiller. Set in the 60s, this Elseworld story follows a doomed Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson, aka Richard Graystark, which is his actual name here, although he still goes by Dick Grayson because comics. These two attempt to take on the Joker, who in this world is a woman known as Bianca Steeplechase. In the end, Robin is killed, but so seemingly is the Joker. Oddly enough, in this reality, it's actually Batwoman and Robin who end up inspiring Bruce Wayne to join them. He becomes Batman after Dick's demise. Barbara is also the one with the wealth in this Elseworld story. She is an heiress who became somewhat estranged from her father after the unsolvable murder of her mother. Barbara uses her wealth to purchase Wayne Manor, as in this reality, the Waynes actually lost their fortune during the Great Depression. Very period of them. Very period to lose all of your money during the Great Depression. Or now, during the Now Depression. Number 5. Red Rain. Red Rain has to be one of my all-time favorite Elseworlds tales. It also was an ongoing story that was told over the course of multiple graphic novels released throughout the 90s. In this story, Batman battles vampires but eventually succumbs to them when he is bitten and transformed himself into one of the creatures of the night. He still battles with his new monstrous nature, however, attempting to rebel against it. However, eventually the Joker pushes him too far, causing him to give into temptation and drink his foe's blood. I also like how this is rebel. This is like get off my lawn, kids. I don't know why I do this when I say rebel. Batman attempts to make sure the Joker will never rise again as a vampire, but eventually it is revealed that he was somehow unsuccessful in preventing this from happening when we revisit this alternate Earth much later down the road. Fans of vampires are sure to also enjoy this world, but as a Batman fan, I also just love the extra layer of moral struggle that vampirism gives Batman. Number 4. Earth 3. Earth 3 is home to the Crime Syndicate, an alternate reality where instead of the Justice League members being heroes, they're villains, and instead of the Justice League, we have the Crime Syndicate. In the place of Wonder Woman on the team, we have Superwoman, an evil version of Lois Lane armed with her lasso of submission. Although I always like to think of it as a whip of submission, but that's not. That's something else. You guys can cut that. That might be too kinky. I don't know. I don't know if it's too kinky. You tell me, internet. You tell me. The heroes of this alternate Earth favor strength above all, and as such only seek to dominate and rule those who they consider to be weaker than them. The Crime Syndicate themselves are composed of members Deathstorm, Owlman, Superwoman, and Ultraman currently, but evil versions of Aquaman, known on this alternate Earth as Sea King, and the Flash, known here as Johnny Quick, were also part of the team at a time. I miss Johnny Quick. R.I.P. Johnny Quick. You dead. Number 3. Elseworld's Finest. I mostly love this story for the art, to be honest. Elseworld's Finest is quite different from the previous story we had with no Superman or Batman, with Supergirl and Batgirl respectively taking their place. This title of this story and two-part limited series was initially based on the old comic series World's Finest, which featured the two heroes of Superman and Batman teaming up on the regular. Basically, it's their long-lasting BFF comic. In Elseworld's Finest, we see the heroes team up to go on an Indiana Jones style adventure, with Bruce rocking some pretty sweet supernatural and mystical armor. The two must work together to face an evil Russian Lex and defeat the villainous Ra's al Ghul in order to save the world and free Lana Lang's father. Number 2. Red Sun. One of the most intriguing Elseworlds when it comes to Superman, and in my opinion Lex Luthor for any Lex fans out there, is Red Sun. Red Sun comes to us from the Elseworlds imprint and aims to answer the question, what if Superman had been raised in the Soviet Union? The result is we get a passionate communist Superman who, instead of standing for truth, justice, and the American way, stands for socialism, Stalin, and acts as a champion of the common worker. Instead of an S on his chest, he wears the symbol of communism, the hammer and sickle. Red Sun was a story written by Mark Miller, which offered us a different look at Lex Luthor as well, who became the president and sort of the hero of the USA, all as a part of his greater plan to satiate his obsession with destroying Superman. So in a weird way, Lex becomes sort of part hero as well as the recognizable part paranoid villain that we've all come to know and love. Number 1. Earth 1. Also known as Earth 1 with the number instead of the letters, so Earth 1 or Earth 1. But it's also confusing because there's multiple Earth 1s. When it comes to some of the DC multiverse, it can actually just get a little confusing in general, as of course there are various Earths that have the same number depending on the continuity we're talking about, New Earth or Prime Earth, not to be confused as well with Earth Prime. Yeah, it can get pretty mathy up in your brain if you're trying to keep track of everything and separate it. But this time around, when I'm talking about alternate Earths when it comes to the number 1, I'm talking about Earth 1, where all of our heroes are just starting out as seen in the Earth 1 series, like Batman Earth 1, Superman Earth 1, Wonder Woman Earth 1. You get the idea. There's a lot of Earth 1s. I like how I didn't talk about how it was interesting at all, I just talked about how it was confusing. Anyways, if you've read Earth 1 or any of those series, you know what I'm talking about. It's awesome. Enough said, apparently. Number 10. What if Captain America hadn't vanished during World War II? Captain America did vanish during World War II in the main continuity, but there is another important plot point in this story that we've seen happen more than once in comics, and that is Bucky Barnes taking over as Captain America. While Bucky was believed dead for years in the comics, he eventually returned in the early 2000s as the Winter Soldier, and it was revealed while being suspected as deceased after falling from a plane and being reported MIA that he had actually survived all these years. We've seen him take over and become Captain America both during the House of M event and in the main continuity during Brubaker's run of Captain America in 2008. And he also died as Captain America in the main continuity as well. So that's pretty interesting. Or we thought he died. Who knows if that would have been the truth in the What If story if it had continued. Number 9. What if Iron Man had been a traitor? It might have not gone down the same way as it did in the What If, but a version of this story did end up becoming true in the bizarre crossing event in the mid-90s. Here it was revealed that Iron Man was actually a traitor, though this time around a less innocent one. It was revealed he had been made Kang's sleeper agent and was working in league with the villain. In the end, traitorous Tony Stark died, and a younger version of himself, still good since he had been taken from a point in his timeline before Iron Man had been influenced by Kang, took his place. In the What If special, he instead becomes a traitor working for China against his nation and his fellow teammates and friends. Fortunately, Iron Man is rescued from being used as a pawn by Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four, who received his message requesting help. So he wasn't as traitorous in that story as he was in the main continuity. Number 8. What if this was the Fantastic Four? This was a story told as part of the Hero Initiative. Mike Wieringo had been working on the What If story before he suddenly passed away and had completed 7 pages of it. As such, the release date for the story was pushed back and it was utilized as a tribute for the amazing artist. The story is kind of an interesting special case where the What If was actually inspired by a true story that came before it from the main continuity, between issues 347 to 349 of the Fantastic Four series. The alternate team comprised of the Hulk as Joe Fixit, Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Danny Ketch as Ghost Rider stepped in to replace the Fantastic Four after they were tricked into believing most of the original team had actually perished by a Skrull who was posing as the Invisible Woman. I think it was Delilah. I think that's how we still say her name, it's like D apostrophe. Delilah? Yeah, I think so. This team was brought back a few more times in the comics and eventually became known as the go-to FF substitute team and team members, and are still referred to as such in comics today. This 2008 What If series imagined an alternate retelling where the team simply remained as the only FF left after the Skrull who had tricked them killed the original team members instead of simply incapacitating them. Wieringo was also misinformed during the creation of the What If and instead drew Johnny Blaze as Ghost Rider instead of Danny Ketch as Ghost Rider. Although this was going to be corrected before the book was published, because of his passing, Marvel decided to leave the art as it was, as opposed to altering Mike's art after his passing. Which I kind of agree with that decision, because I feel like that would have been really distasteful to his memory to change it. So instead we get Johnny Blaze, but other than that, this is a crew that's already happened in the comics. Number 7. What if Punisher's family hadn't been killed? Though of course in this story the Punisher's family is still killed, because yeah, it's kind of hard for Frank Castle to even become any version of the Punisher otherwise. However, instead of him being inspired to take up arms after his family gets caught in the crossfire of a mob hit and killed, they survive that fateful day, all because it rained on their picnic. Whew, that's some lucky rain. Frank becomes inspired to join the force and become a police officer. However, when offered a bribe, he reports the incident to his captain, hoping to book the crooks who are paying off the cops to look the other way. In the end, it's revealed that even his captain is part of this scheme, and he and his family are still targeted, but this time by some dirty cops. He survives, however, and becomes the Punisher. While this story does not make its way into the main continuity of Earth 616, this was basically verbatim the backstory used for the Ultimate Punisher from the kind of main continuity adjacent Earth of 1610. After all, there was a time when Ultimate was so big it was like basically an alternate main continuity. Number 6. What if Jessica Jones had joined the Avengers? Not surprisingly, this story was written by Brian Michael Bendis. In the What If, we get to see a hypothetical world where Jessica Jones is offered a spot on the Avengers shortly after she attacked them after being mind controlled by the Purple Man, Kilgrave. Here, she joins the team and ends up marrying Captain America. In reality, aka the main continuity, Jessica Jones would end up joining the new Avengers alongside her husband on her 616, Luke Cage, 6 years later in terms of the comic's release date, joining up with the team in 2010's New Avengers run in issue number 1. Can you guess who the writer was for that issue? Yep, Brian Michael Bendis. Brian Michael Bendis' New Avengers. I like that though. I like Jessica Jones on the Avengers. I think that's cool. Number 5. What if General Ross had become the Hulk? This story came out only a few years before General Ross became the villain and beast known as Red Hulk. Although this story isn't quite as close to the original as our previous point. The What If story was written by Peter Davis, while the issue where Ross takes up the mantle of Red Hulk happens in an issue issue of Hulk written by Jeff Loeb. So we've got two different writers for this one as opposed to them both being the same person. And a dark twist, General Ross in the What If issue ends up becoming the Hulk in the place of Bruce Banner. He becomes a rage-fueled monster who has to be put down by Bruce himself after he kills his own daughter Betty by accident when he tosses a tank which lands, crushing her. Devastating. Number 4. What if Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four? This one takes a different direction but arrives at the same goal. In the What If story, Spider-Man, instead of being turned away by the FF on their first meeting with him when he attempts to join up, offers to hear him out. Sue convinces her team to listen to Spider-Man, and they eventually decide that he can join their team, becoming the Fantastic Five instead of the Fantastic Four. They all have fives on their chest. In the end, Sue ends up leaving the team with Spider-Man feeling that him showing her up was what caused her to leave. Wow, big ego much, Spider-Man? She ends up choosing to leave the FF and be with Namor, and he transforms her into an Atlantean, intending for Sue to become his queen. In the main continuity, Spider-Man joins the new version of the FF at the time, known as the Future Foundation, instead after the other Storm sibling has left. Johnny Storm was thought to be dead at that time, and so Spider-Man basically fills in his spot on the Fantastic Four team. To this day, Spider-Man is still considered to be on the extended roster to fill in as a substitute member when needed. Number 3. What if the Hulk had the brain of Bruce Banner? Well, this one might not line up exactly either. You'll definitely see similarities when it comes to the premise. In this story, we get to see what would happen if the Hulk ended up being as level-headed and intelligent as Bruce Banner. Sound familiar? Later on in 1991, we get our first look at a version of the Hulk that was Bruce Banner, the Grey Hulk persona, and the Green Hulk persona merged, leading us down a road to what we'd later come to know as Professor Hulk. Of course, in the What If, we also saw a new being named X-Man come into being when Mr. Fantastic, Professor X, and Intelligent Hulk merged in an attempt to defeat Galactus. And I don't think we've seen that part come true just yet. Number 2. What if Jane Foster had found the Hammer of Thor? In this issue, we see what would happen if Jane Foster were the one to find and retrieve Thor's hammer, being deemed worthy by the weapon to wield it. She takes up the name Thordis in this issue and ends up fighting Loki. Upon meeting Odin, even in her Thordis form, he still does not like Jane, seeing her as an imposter, a Valkyrie in Thor's raiment. In the end, Odin gets over his distaste of Thordis and Jane Foster after she helps him to avert Ragnarok. He does make her give the hammer back to Thor, who is currently Donald Blake, but as a reward he also makes her an Asgardian goddess. Not a bad trade. In the main continuity, Jane became Lady Thor after Thor was deemed not worthy and the hammer called to her. Number 1. What if Thor was the Herald of Galactus? This one recently came true in Donny Cates' current run on Thor. Thor and Galactus teamed up initially to take on the universal threat that was the Black Winter. However, this idea was initially explored by Robert Kirkman more than 10 years earlier in the 2005 What If Thor. In this What If story, Thor becomes the Herald of Galactus and instead teams up with him to take on Loki, who has conquered Asgard and killed Odin after initially agreeing to become Galactus' herald to save Asgard from his hunger. Thor instead decides to let Galactus devour Asgard now that it is in ruins, and Loki rules it, first allowing his friends and fellow Asgardians who survived Loki's initial assault to escape to Midgard. Then he murders a bunch of frost giants and lets Galactus have his fill.
Number 10. What if, but don't worry, Mr. President can handle it himself, being Captain America and all. We see the return of Red Skull in this story as well, and in typical Steve Rogers fashion, we of course have to look into what if Captain America was revived today, written again by Peter B. Gillen.
Carnage Cosmic is a version of Carnage where he is bonded to none other than the Silver Surfer. During the first appearance of this hypothetical monstrosity, Carnage simply used Silver Surfer as a mode of transportation to get back to his beloved host, Cletus Cassidy. However, in issue 108 of What If Volume 2 in the 1989 series, we examine what would happen if the villain became more of a greater threat. It takes all of the Avengers to even stand a chance against him, and even then they are overwhelmed. In the end, Silver Surfer is forced to fly into the sun to get rid of this stubborn and deadly symbiote, which also means he has to fight for control all the while. Number 9. What if Rick Jones became the Hulk? Okay, so admittedly this story is more silly than scary, but if you actually think through everything Rick Jones goes through here and the fate of Hulk at the end of this story, it can be seen as, well, being pretty scary. Also, I just really like it. Like Annihilus' voice and demeanor, it's both a scary and raunchy story. Yeah, you heard me right, raunchy. Don't ask me, Rick is the one that mentions Annihilus' raunchiness in this issue. Here we see Rick not only become the big green Goliath, but we also watch as he finds himself bonded with Captain Marvel as well, sharing a body with him. So, just a lot going on all at once in my opinion. You'd think we'd swap his Marvel Negaband story for the Hulk one, but no, we're not going to do that. In this reality, both happen. In the end, Mr. Fantastic and a normal Bruce Banner end up helping Rick return to normal, but Hulk remains trapped in the Negazone with Annihilus, so they kind of get like separated. He makes quick work of the villain while in the Negazone, then remains stuck there for forever? He doesn't seem to mind at the end of the story, but I feel like if we checked back on him in a few months, he wouldn't be quite as happy. Seems like a strangely happy spin on what should be a pretty dark ending. I also just like how everyone after is like, it turned out great for everyone, or for most of us. What, how's Hulk? And Rick's just like, I'm sure he's fine. Cut to Hulk having the best time. And before we move on to our number 8 spot, just a quick reminder, if you're enjoying this list and lists like this, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help us out here at the channel. Number 8, what if John Jameson had become the Amazing Spider-Man? This one is more sad than it is scary, but it has a pretty tragic ending, so I still felt it was appropriate enough to include it here. In the final story included in this What If issue, we learn of an alternate reality where John Jameson ends up becoming Spider-Man, or Spider Jameson. Instead of being reviled by J. Jonah Jameson, his father, he's completely supported by JJ, because yeah, that's his son, and Jameson Sr. knows that he's, you know, Spider-Man. Jameson even designs John's spider suit here. However, in the end, John dies while attempting to help with the same mission that 616 Peter Parker Spider-Man ended up saving him from, leaving his father heartbroken. What a tragic ending. Died the same way he died sort of in 616, but different circumstances? Number 7, what if the Avengers had never been? This issue ends pretty darkly in a reality where we explore the future of the Avengers who did not stay banded together after Hulk left. Instead of going to search for Hulk together, Thor has the revelation that Hulk should be allowed to leave if he would like, as, you know, none of the Avengers have taken an oath to remain loyal forever or any such thing. Iron Man then calls Thor out for only thinking this way because he too is planning on leaving. Stark obviously has some, like, abandonment issues, I feel like. Thor doesn't take kindly to this retort and does leave, and so do Hank and Janet, currently known here as Giant Man and the Wasp. In the end, Hulk teams up with Namor, and Iron Man is forced to face them solo styles after trying a few times to get the team back together. Eventually, Giant Man and the Wasp do end up showing up to help Iron Man out, but sadly, it ends up being too late. During the fray, Iron Man is badly injured, and while the heroes win the day in the end, their victory comes at the cost of Iron Man's life. How tragic. How dark. Death. Number 6, Public Enemy number 1. This story comes at us from the line of What If stories we got in 2006. It tells the tale of James Howlett, Logan, Wolverine, who ends up teaming up with Matteo DiPrigio in Chicago to defeat criminal and mob boss Scarface. Here, Logan becomes a version of, I guess, the Skull, the man responsible for killing Scarface, but he also becomes something else. He wears a flag on his chest that shows the Jolly Roger and this skull and crossbones symbol, as well as the backstory of his family who were burnt to a crisp, are meant to also make him another feared vigilante character well known in the Marvel Universe as the Punisher. And when I say his family was burnt to a crisp, I mean like killed, burnt to a crisp, not like they got a bad sunburn, just so you know. This is a dark and gritty tale that also gives us a pretty awesome historical atmosphere, as well as an overall gangster story tone that's quite dark and draws you in. It's both scary and intriguing, which is how I like anything that's scary personally. I'm like, this is scary, but it makes me think, which I like. Number 5, what if Prince Namor of Atlantis grew up on land? This story's title doesn't inherently make it sound scary, and yet. Namor here, instead of siding with his own people of Atlantis and that heritage, decides to align himself with land dwellers, turning his back on the sea. He still fought in World War II, but during that time lost his friend, the android known as the Human Torch, or Jim Hammond. So, not Johnny Storm, different Human Torch. Immortalized as a hero, the Human Torch's memory lives on, but so too, does it seem, did he. 30 years later, the government gets a signal, which they think is from the Human Torch, calling out, repeating the same word he was saying on repeat when he went missing: Namor. Namor is sent in to investigate and finds his people have been enslaved by a race of half-human and half-Atlantean people who it turns out are still allied with Germany and the Axis, despite the war being long over. They plan on using the Human Torch under the sea to create a huge and damaging explosion. Namor prevents their plans, but is then ordered to destroy Atlantis, despite the fact that those enslaved are trying to fight back. In the end, he refuses to harm his own people, but the government doesn't care and they blow them up anyways, leaving Namor to once again live up to the meaning of his name, Avenging Sun. They also thought they killed Namor, but they didn't. Namor's not that easy to kill. Number 4. What if the Marvel superheroes had lost Atlantis Attacks? Yes, what if? Atlantis Attacks is such a weird story. Well, the world would basically be ruled by snake people is the answer, and yeah, that's what happens here. Here, Set is not prevented from arriving and being released upon the world. Once the Elder God does arrive, he sets to work raising the planet and turning everyone into his snake people, including some of our favorite heroes. In the end, only a handful of heroes and villains are left to set everything right, and even they fail. Quasar does manage in the end to defeat Set, but the world is still left covered in giant snakes and snake people with no foreseeable way to fix it, and many of our favorite heroes and villains are left either transformed into snake people or dead. Pretty scary. Number 3, what if the Avengers had become the pawns of Corvac? In this reality, we examined what would happen had Corvac been successful in defeating Earth's mightiest heroes, the Avengers, and succeeded in standing up against all who opposed him because of the constant love of a woman. You can do anything if you have the love of a good person, apparently. In the end, Michael Corvac brings some of the heroes back to life to serve him as he goes up against even mightier enemies. Armed with the ultimate nullifier at the end, however, Corvac uses it to bring ultimate order to all things, which actually results in everything being destroyed in that reality, including the entire reality itself. So I guess bringing order means killing everything? I guess you can't have disorder if there's nothing. Number 2, Kingdom of Cain. This What If story comes to us from issue 94 of Volume 2, the 1989 What If series. Here we see the Juggernaut roams the post-apocalyptic landscape of the Earth completely alone, the sole survivor after a disastrous Sentinel attack which decimated the Earth's heroes and the Earth itself by leaking radiation poisoning all over the place. Juggernaut seems to be the only one capable of living in this place, and he becomes almost driven mad by the loneliness. Because he's the only one. Until he discovers that not everyone is dead, but actually some people have survived and are living in safety in an underground bunker. This discovery comes after he runs into Magneto, who tells Juggernaut that he knows for certain, having peered into alternate timelines, that this is all his fault, and that everyone that was killed all happened because he himself killed Charles Xavier, his stepbrother. When Cain finds the rest of the mutants who have survived, he hastily breaks through into their bunker, thereby exposing them to the radiation poisoning on the Earth's surface, and ultimately kills them too, albeit by accident, which, yeah, it's really sad. He's like, I don't want to be mean, I just want to talk to someone, and they're like, we're dying now because of you, get out of here. No one wants to talk to you, Cain. Number 1, what if the Fantastic Four's second child had lived? This doesn't sound like it should be the scariest story on the list, but it definitely is. The first story in this series is just a straight up horror story where Sue ends up giving birth to a healthy baby girl, but dying herself in childbirth. And that's not even the scary part. From the beginning, the doctors warned her that her pregnancy would be difficult, and from the beginning, Franklin Richards knew something was wrong with his unborn sister. Is like the most dark, menacing face. When the baby does come into the world, who's named after her deceased mother, so I guess like Sue Jr., it's revealed that she is actually an energy-draining monster who kills those around her by feeding on their life force energy. Franklin is finally able to convince his father of this, but too late, as Reed dies in the ensuing battle, leaving Franklin all alone. Just a sad orphan. Also, yeah, he was so right. His sister's like a straight up demon monster thing. Yikes. Number 10. What if Mary Jane had been shot instead of Aunt May? This is a really epic and dark story where Peter ends up going on a rampage when Mary Jane is killed by Kingpin's hired sniper assassin instead of Aunt May. Peter manages to save Aunt May, but Mary Jane ends up dead, and as a result, Pete dons his black suit and goes after the Kingpin himself. He is met with resistance when Tony Stark as Iron Man attempts to confront him and talk sense into him. Spider-Man, however, is too far gone and is definitely not in the mood for advice from Tony Stark. This results in an epic fight between the two heroes, while Wilson Fisk's life hangs in the balance of who will win. In the end, Peter ends up getting his revenge, one-punching Fisk to death before being arrested by the authorities. He regrets ever trusting Tony Stark and ever marrying Mary Jane. As Wilson Fisk would say, this issue is so goth. Number 9. What if Spider-Man became the Punisher? This one ends up at least having a happy ending, but starts off being pretty dark and pretty scary. In this story, we imagine what life would have been like for Peter if he had become the Punisher. Instead of beating his villains and them ending up just locked away, for many, their fate is much more final. Even the Green Goblin ends up being killed by Spider-Man Punisher following the confrontation with Gwen at the bridge. Gwen, however, lives, not killed from the great height from which she was dropped. I do love how they keep drilling in that it would be the fall, not the impact, that would kill her, like in the original story, which I always thought was so bizarre. Spider-Man Punisher saves Gwen, but Green Goblin ends up dead, and Harry swears vengeance on the man who killed his father. Although this story has a dark and murderous narrative, it gives us a more happy ending, sort of. Peter chooses love instead of vengeance in the end and gives up being the Punisher, retiring from vigilante life to go be happy with Gwen. As this decision is made, however, Frank Castle loses his family and miraculously survives the shootout in Central Park, in the end becoming the Punisher in this reality as was fated. Although I do think it's really weird in that story that like Gwen living is the thing that like changes that for him. If your like girlfriend's life was threatened, wouldn't that make you more angry? Maybe not. I've never been Spider-Man, so I don't really know. Alright friends, before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder to click that thumbs up. It's good for your health, it's good for your heart, it's good for your brain. Number 8. What if Ord resurrected Jean Grey instead of Colossus? In this story, Jean is brought back to life at a time where it is revealed that Cassandra Nova holds influence over Emma Frost. Fearing the return of the Phoenix Force, which would join to Jean Grey once more, Emma decides to take matters into her own hands. Her own diamond hands. It's revealed that the Phoenix Force has been lurking within her cuckoo's minds, and she decides to take hold of it, killing them in the process. Tragic. She then plans on defeating Jean. The X-Men band together to face her, and S.H.I.E.L.D. and S.W.O.R.D. also conveniently join the fray. It's like, we're here too. In the end, Ord, Beast, Emma, and her cuckoos and Kitty lay dead, and the Phoenix is contained, but Cassandra remains undetected, still out there waiting for the right moment to strike. Number 7. What If? The Spider Who Went Into the Cold. This story comes to us from the What If story Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, and asks the question, what if Spider-Man never came back out from the cold? This story sees Peter Parker actually kill someone while acting as Spider-Man. It was an accident. He thought the person had armor that would protect him from the hit, but it was powered down. Of course, who should be working alongside Spidey when this happens but of course Wolverine, who shows no remorse for what Spider-Man has done, jokingly suggesting that they cry about it. In the end, this event changes Peter after he and Wolverine save his friend Alex, and this causes him to become a killing machine. He receives further training, and although he still has a sense of morality, no longer has qualms with taking out the bad guys permanently. He leaves MJ and his life behind, setting out to join S.H.I.E.L.D., working on as a hired Black Ops team. Also, I love a good Spider-Man Wolverine team up because it's just not what you usually get. I love when they team up. Number 6. What if Iron Man had been a traitor? I personally think this one is pretty scary if you put yourself in Iron Man's shoes. For me, one of my biggest fears, and I think one of the most human fears out there, is just a lack of control. In Tony Stark's case, he doesn't really have any control over what he does or how he acts in this story, but is forced into being a traitor when a rival country gains control of his heart. If he refuses to do as is demanded of him, he is put through intense and unyielding chest pains and could be killed. This ends up putting him on a path to attempt to kill Reed Richards, all while leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for Reed to follow so that he might be able to figure out that Stark's actions are not his true intentions and that he is being manipulated into harming his compatriots and betraying his country. Number 5. What If the Man the Monster? This is actually one of the scariest ones for me in my opinion. This story was such an intense story that we didn't even get an introduction from the watcher you oughta. Here we have a story where the roles are reversed between Bruce and the Hulk, where Bruce is the monster and the Hulk, or Starman as he's known here, is the sensitive, compassionate one. Here Bruce Banner is a colonel who marries Betty only to mistreat her after being traumatized from years of being mistreated by his own father and witnessing the cruelty his father doled out to his mother. The gamma radiation does split Banner into two beings here, transforming him into another creature with immense power, but this creature is the side of him that actually represents the compassionate side of this trauma, the side who wants to protect, not hurt, whereas Bruce Banner himself becomes the malicious monster. We hear this story from Betty's perspective, who ends up trying to speak out on the way Bruce has treated her, only to have her father not even believe her and send her back to Bruce once she's left, and to later have her confession to Doc Samson manipulated by Colonel Banner, causing her to end up getting sent to a mental institution. Also, I'm not sure what's happening in this last panel of this comic, if it's just like she doesn't know that they're about to come get her and take her away, or if she's there and she's just like, it's fine that I'm here. I'm gonna assume it's the first one, because otherwise that's a really weird way to end that story. Number 4. What if Legion had killed Xavier and Magneto? Just imagine how messed up Age of Apocalypse would be, but also you don't have to, because the story's gonna do it for you. Thank you, What If. As always, when things get this bad, we have Nate to save the day. Nate Summers believes he can band together his own team of the few heroes left alive after Apocalypse's unopposed rise to take down Apocalypse and even travel back to the past to make things right. Silly Nate Summers. Instead, this only results in Captain America and Wolverine. Wolverine's hair here, by the way, is the real horror show of this story, opposing Nate's plan once it is revealed. Seeing Nate in Apocalypse's armor after Nate has defeated Apocalypse causes them to believe that Nate is trying to kind of take the place of Apocalypse and in essence become a new kind of tyrant, but a tyrant all the same. As Nate uses the Eye of Agamotto and Molecule Man to travel back in time to what he doesn't know is an alternate reality's past, Captain America, armed with Thor's hammer, sends a bolt of lightning after him that kills thousands in that past, setting in motion the apocalypse once more. Number 3. What if Danger became a bride of Ultron? I like how the title is a bride, even though in this reality Danger becomes like the ultimate bride of Ultron. A bride, as though in this reality Ultron is like multiple brides. I feel like that never works out for him, to be honest. But either way, this gives Ultron what he has always truly desired, that sweet, sweet love connection. I mean, completion, yes. Completion. That's what he's looking for. After Danger rebels against the X-Men seeking revenge basically for years of being used and trapped as their danger room with no one acknowledging her sentience, Ultron hears her calling out, senses her, and leaves his creation Victor, destroying him in order to find her. The two come together, and as a wedding present, Ultron gives Danger her father, Professor X, helpless against the technology as his telepathic powers don't work on them. Ultron has him crushed and killed. The story ends with Danger and Ultron soaring off to bring havoc to the universe, flying through space on their creepy mishmashed Sentinel child. It's like a scary story, but it's also a romance story at the same time. Number 2. What if Wolverine was never deprogrammed? This is a pretty scary and gruesome one, I'm not gonna lie. Though, you know, still keeping in line with the PG-13 aspect of comics, a lot of the gore is hidden, but you can still imagine it, and when you imagine what's happening to these people here, it's pretty insane. Here we get to imagine what if Wolverine just kept on being a killing machine, brainwashed into taking out his fellow heroes, including all of those that he loved. As in many of these potential scenarios, it comes down to Wolverine and Kitty Pryde. Kitty is unable to fathom how Wolverine could be so far gone that he'd kill her, and yet after witnessing the death of everyone at his hands, including Invisible Woman, who is clawed through the bottom of her feet before getting claws right through her face, and Captain America, who gets claws right up through the bottom of his jaw through his entire head, she is forced to confront the reality that her mentor and friend Logan is really gone. Like, that's definitely gonna convince you once you see that. You're like, okay, there's no hope for you. In the end, she sacrifices her hand, and it's implied her life in killing Wolverine. She phases her hand through his head, turning it solid, and then letting go as Wolverine instinctively slices off her arm, preventing his body from being unable to heal due to the hand lodged in his brain. That'll definitely prevent someone from healing. I don't even wanna Think about how you try to do that. How do you function with the hand in your brain? I ask you. Number 1. What if Spider-Man had rejected the spider? This is a pretty creepy, crawly, scary one. It begins with Peter Cocoon but refusing to take the spider's path home. Instead, he kills the giant spider that confronts him while in metamorphosis, remaining lost and unable to move forward, only half a being, until Venom escapes Matt Gargan and prison in order to rejoin with Peter Parker, aware that he is stuck in this stasis mode and vulnerable. Venom bonds with the Cocoon, and after months of battling with Peter inside, is eventually reborn as a new being who goes by the name Poison. Half Peter, half Venom symbiote, permanently bonded. Poison confronts Mary Jane at the Avengers mansion, but after horrifically attacking her, Aunt May, Wolverine, and Luke Cage, and being spurned by her, disappears, resurrecting his first love, Gwen Stacy, and likely planning to turn her into his monstrous bride. Also, there's a weird thing that happens in that story where that poison basically pierces Luke Cage's skin, and then he's like, haha, even I can pierce your stone skin because I'm sharp enough, and I was like, wait, what just happened? Doesn't really make a lot of sense. But other than that, it's all pretty good, I think.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the death of Anthony Stark. Yeah, the front page looks like that. Now imagine if that was the poster for Endgame. Oh god, so many tears. So many more tears, rather. Ayo. This issue is wild. It shows all these superheroes mourning the loss of their friend and fellow Avenger. Even Doctor Doom's mourning. He does like a toast. He's a villain. What's going on? He's like, ah yes, let us drink now to the memory of a worthy opponent. And to make things even crazier, he writes a note to Rhodey that says, this key card will give you full access to the entire complex. Take this CD to my office, play it on the AV system, boom. The guy's carrying around super suits in briefcases, but he gives Rhodey a compact disc. Gotta love the time. So he puts it in and clicks play, and it's so sad. It shows Stark explaining that somebody has to continue after him. And then bam, you see a suit made just for Rhodey. What a moment. Tony continues to say that Iron Man was the greatest thing he's ever invented, and he doesn't want it to die with him. What a message. So moving. I'm touched, personally. It's overwhelming for Rhodey. I mean, of course, all this newfound responsibility of being Iron Man, plus, oh, mourning your best friend. Ayo, that's a tough one. What a week. So finally, he suits up, and it's so badass. Tony Stark may be dead, but Iron Man lives again. So lovely. And the best part, turns out Tony wasn't actually dead at all. Rather just under cryogenic stasis until a scientist sorted out his back problems. Yeah, psych, gotcha, made you look. And before we go on to number 9, guys, if you could please go ahead and toss us a thumbs up for this video because it helps us out here quite a bit. You guys are the best. All right, now back to zombie Tony Stark. Number 9, zombie time. Marvel's zombie is amazing. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting and terrifying, but amazing nonetheless. So Marvel Zombies is a 5-part series written by Robert Kirkman, and it doesn't hold back. I mean, right off the hop, we see Spider-Man with his leg just like messed up. He's like eating people. It's gross. It's kind of like these heroes in a way you don't want to see them, but you kind of do want to see them. It's gross, I don't know. And then we also see Captain America with the top of his head just sliced off, just boop, gone. Everybody's like, hey, Cap, you know, your brains are hanging out of your head. And then he grabs some brain tissue and says, nope, not all of them. And then in comes Tony Stark. He goes detective mode, right? He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. So you're telling me there's no Magneto left? He just burned away? Banner is only Banner after he eats, and Spider-Man's all emotional like he just had some yum-yums. You didn't save any for me. Interesting. It's a really wild way to see Tony's leadership, especially considering the context. He's like, give me your face now, I want to eat it. Pew.
I'm sure the Green Goblin can afford some more bacon. Dude, this supposed to last us till we get rescued.
Number 8, Iron Man and Titanium Man. All the metals, all the men, bam, explosions. In Tales of Suspense issue 69, we see another metal guy. This time, he's green. Oh, like that, it's green. You can't see, but it's green. Ah, there we are, now it's green. Titanium Man, how exciting. They make this big event, right, to watch the two smash heads. It's like a UFC fight, but with monologues and narrating every single fight move you're gonna make. If you skip this issue, that's fine, you're not missing out. There's a guy in a suit who thinks he's better, and he's actually slower and way more stupid. Yep, there it is. He wants all the eyes and ears on him, of course, he likes attention, but when it comes to brass tacks, you don't stand a chance, Boris Bolsky. More like Boris Bullsh. Number 7, Superior Iron Man. This is a fun one, but still a little out of character from the Tony that most of us know. So the issue itself starts off pretty neat, okay? It kind of mirrors the tech that he has in his latest films. He can control his suit, fly in it, fly around, high-five babies, all that cool stuff, all while laying in a pool sipping on drinks. Yeah, his new Extremis armor was fascinating. So much so that Tony released it as a smartphone app. Yeah, imagine having that at the bottom. You got messages, Instagram, some Extremis, and then Angry Birds too. You know, all the essentials for sure. So this app allowed people to change their bodies using this virus, becoming however they wanted. What a dream come true. And then Tony does the ultimate move and says the app is actually just a free trial. Yeah, if you want to continue it, you gotta pay $100 a day. Honestly, it's not bad. I mean, dudes are out here buying PlayStation 5s for like $3 grand. That's not a bad price for some Tony tech. I'll just get my buddy Matt from grade 10 to jailbreak my phone again, just like the old days. We're good. Number 6, Demon in a Bottle. Now sure, Tony's struggling with addictions isn't weird per se, but it is a plot device that we're not gonna see in future MCU movies. I mean, we saw a little glimpse of it in Iron Man 2, but not too much, of course, because kids are like, why is he dying? Why is he drinking things? What's going on? So this character arc begins in Iron Man issue 120, and it lasts about 9 issues. At first we see Tony and he's just slamming drinks like it's prom night, all right? The opening shot, we see like 3 mini bottles of gin, and then Tony orders more. So the flight attendant's like, hey, how about a magazine to read? And Tony's like, hey, how about another martini? And she even tries to cut him off, but he insists that he's drinking for 2. The other, of course, being his Iron Man persona. Always a healthy sign. Oh, me, I'm drinking for myself and also this H&M sweater, so I need 2, thank you. What happens when you have a superhero who loves slamming martinis? Well, you get Tony Stark flying through the air, drunk, spreading toxic fumes all over a crowd. He's kind of like Hancock in a way, just dangerous. Funny, but dangerous. The alcohol addiction was of course put to the side with the MCU story, thank God. That would take us out of the movie, I think, just a little bit. Like if Tony snapped his fingers and then like a bottle of gin appeared and he's like, perfect. Number 5, Ultimates 3. So since Iron Man 2, we're talking about it a little bit, we saw the relationship between Black Widow and Tony get stronger. And they get really close, but not Ultimates 3 close, heh. So the 2008 5-parter opens up with this shot. All the Ultimates just hanging out in Tony's mansion, and then in the background there's a tape playing. This tape being Black Widow and Tony Stark, doing the thing. Check it out. The issue itself is titled Sex, Lies, and DVDs. Not even Blu-ray either, just DVDs. So what's the deal? Why does this exist? Well, in the Ultimates 2, her and Iron Man dated and of course got engaged, but it's all a lie. A sham. She was trying to destroy the Avengers for the fall of the Soviet Union. That is, until she's killed by Hawkeye. So after she's dead, the tape gets released. People are selling DVDs of it on the streets of New York. It's kind of like in Luke Cage where people are selling footage of the incident, but imagine if they were selling that incident. Some of these stories just need to stay in pages, I think. Number 4, the new Iron Man. The Invincible Iron Man issue 21 had a pretty eye-opening front page illustration. It's Tony Stark quitting. The front page even says, no, this is not a nightmare. So he decides that flying around in a super suit just doesn't blend well with the old ticker, right? He's got heart problems going on. So he looks at somebody else to take on the mantle of Iron Man. So who does he go to besides Eddie March, the famous fighter with brain trauma and damage? Awesome. So he suits up and he loves it, of course. I mean, he's adding clips, he's boxing people, he's making it his own, you know? He's just having a good time. And then Crimson Dynamo ruins that and Tony is forced to return to the tin. I'm surprised he didn't ask Mike Tyson. I mean, his name is already Iron Mike Tyson. Number 3, Convention of Fear. If you're watching this video right now or you're part of our over 1 million subscribers, confetti, odds are you ventured around a comic book convention or 2. So in Iron Man issue 72, titled Convention of Fear, it shows our man in a can getting the job done and taking out low-level villains like Man-Bull, Whiplash, the Melter, all in the home of a comic convention. And of course the battle comes to an awesome end with fans hailing Iron Man, like real fans too, at this convention. I mean, New York is a pretty common battle place, but a fan convention, I don't know, might be a little bit too meta. Number 2, Iron Man Minotaur. I mean, it doesn't get much weirder than this. We got Tony Stark squaring up against a Minotaur, and the other plot going on is this weird love triangle with Jasper Sitwell and then Whitney Frost. So the whole time you're kind of raising an eyebrow. The issue as a whole is odd. He doesn't even do well against the Minotaur. Like, this dude struggles to fight the Minotaur. Then in the last second, Miklos the Minotaur has a change of heart and helps Iron Man save Whitney. Ah, it's great, super thrilling. We love happy endings, I guess. We love to see characters lose control and then immediately gain control only moments later. That's my secret, Cap. I'm always a Minotaur in control.
Sorry boys, momentary loss of motor nerve.
And finally, number 1, trapped by the Red Barbarian. Remember that part in Winter Soldier where Natasha Romanoff has that amazing face-changing technology that for sure could have come in handy for literally any other movie? Well, in Tales of Suspense issue 42, we see a drawn-out version of that idea with the actor. The actor is an interesting lad. He can resemble almost anybody, and in his words, he says, with the aid of a little makeup. Ah yes, changing your entire appearance? Haha, just dab some eyeshadow on. That should do it, says the actor. So the actor steals some tech from Stark because, well, of course he does. And then Tony makes the Red Army believe that he's the actor because they look the same, and then he steals it back. Then the real actor gets killed because they don't believe that the real actor is... Does your brain hurt? My brain kind of hurts. Cool, let's just end it there.